Good afternoon. As he said, my name is Lon Burnam, and I'm a state representative from Fort Worth. I'm going to be beginning my seventh term as a legislator from inner-city Fort Worth. I represent 150,000 people, all of whom live within the 50-mile radius of our topic for today. I've also been to more than one environmental impact scoping meeting. I have a lot of questions that I want to ask. Like most people here today, I've already made up my mind, my opinion about the idea, but I'd like to see these questions addressed in the process of doing an environmental impact statement. As all of you here know, there are many people that believe that the facilities are inherently unsafe and they cannot be made to be safe. However, in that context, there's a lot of things that you need to be looking at, particularly with regard to the never-built-before, not yet approved design of this particular proposed facility. I also want to have a much more serious discussion than I've seen about the implications of terrorism. Certainly, as the gentleman suggested, the elected officials suggested about 911, we are all having to reevaluate and look at that situation much more carefully. The simple fact that you'll have twice as many reactors, the large visible target of the cooling towers, twice as much transportation issues, both for bringing the radioactive material in and dealing with it, if you ever choose to deal with it, off-site, taking it off-site. All of those are kind of geometrically increased problems over the two. The reality is the two now are halfway through their life cycle. They'll be closed down, they'll be mothballed. And in the 50 years of the operation of nuclear power plants, we still have not resolved that issue. So any real, accurate environmental impact statement will have a very careful analysis of the implication of storing this material on site forever. I want to ask a couple of, to me, basic, broad areas that I know I'm not saying anything new to you federal employees that have been involved with these projects, but I can't help but feel like maybe people in Dallas and Fort Worth have not heard these questions adequately raised or answered. Last time we talked about the economics, and I could go on and on about what's changed about the economy since June of last year when we were all here, all of which would suggest that we should be putting our money in decentralized alternative energy as opposed to centralized, made primarily for a large profit that has been spoken to here earlier today. But let's talk about cancer and the background rates. It is a simple fact of life that there's background radiation. And then there's also a simple fact of life, since the first above-ground explosions of nuclear weapons, we've increased that background radiation. There's also a simple fact of life that background radiation is higher at every nuclear power facility in the country. And if you double that, it's a simple fact of life that you're going to double background radiation in this community. I want the environmental impact statement to do an honest analysis and assessment of what that means to the cancer rate in this region. I represent 150,000 people within 50 miles of this facility, and I think it's reasonable to expect that that kind of analysis is done. I want this assessment to include an evaluation of what we do with the radioactive waste. It's still on site. You all know when this facility started operating in the early 90s. It's still on site. It doesn't seem like we're any closer than we were in that time frame to get a permanent waste repository. What are we going to do with this radioactive waste and material? There is the whole issue of accident and security. Back in 1980, the NRC conducted a study, and they concluded at that time that early deaths, and that's a nice catchword for people that die immediately as opposed to long-term, protracted, strung-out deaths. They estimated early deaths of 1,210 within the first 25-mile radius. They estimated early injuries within a 35-mile radius of 13,800. They estimated financial consequences. You know, we always talk in the legislative process about the unplanned consequences or the unintended consequences. Well, the financial consequences could be in excess of $117 billion. Well, you know, it doesn't take a brilliant person to figure out that almost 30 years later, it'll be 35 or 40 years later, once this thing, if it's built, is operational, that those early deaths will be far more than that, in part because of the rapid population growth in Hood and Somervell counties. Those early injuries will be far more than that. And those financial consequences to the entire North Texas region will be far more than what you projected back in 1980. So I look for and anticipate an honest and accurate analysis of those problems. I think we've barely begun to look at the water quantity and quality issues here, but I do find it interesting, the reminder that the lake is a guaranteed constant level lake. Well, what do you think that does to everybody else downriver? I want an honest environmental impact statement on protein sources at the estuary of the Brazos River. We keep over and over again putting negative impacts on our ability to produce protein from our coastline. And this is just one more example of that. If the NRC does not do an honest assessment of that, it is not a legitimate planning process. I'd like to see that addressed. I'd also like to make it clear that while people in Somervell and Granbury may feel like it's been relatively clean and non-harmful to them, they don't live where their uranium is mined. And I guarantee you, if you talk to the tribal leaders in New Mexico, you'll find out that it is not a clean process. And the cancer rates from the tribal lands where this uranium is taken from have gone up exponentially as a result of the mining. So from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, we've yet to have an honest analysis of the environmental impact on health and safety. This is simply not just about the people of Somervell and Hood County. This is not even just about people in North Texas. It's about whether or not it makes good, rational, economic sense to dump this much money into one place to produce one form of energy. We could spend our money much more wisely, and we need an honest environmental impact assessment, not just another pepper.